Hi, if you feel like you are winning in every area of your life except relationships, or if you feel like you are stuck in a prison where you don't have any rights, you don't have any boundaries, you just have to do things that you hate doing over and over again, or if you feel like you swing back and forth from just loving the relationship with this person to absolutely despising it, but there's never really a middle and you're starting to notice that, you might be struggling with something called codependency, and I'm going to tell you a lot more about that in just a minute. Hi, my name is Olivia. I'm passionate about helping you understand what relational trauma is so that you can prevent it, heal from it, overcome it, and move on with your life. So everything we're talking about today comes from my book, How to Stop Chasing Rejection. This is part of the introduction in chapter 1. So if you're someone who cares very deeply about people and you try very hard to be a good friend, or you try really hard to be a good partner, but there always comes a point where you feel like it's not reciprocated, or you start to feel like you're being taken advantage of and you don't know how, you just keep finding people who do this to you. We really at some point have to look at the common denominator, which is us, right? At some point it has to be like, do I really just find all those people, or do I have a hand in this, and what is this? So a lot of times when we're talking about codependent traits, we really are thinking of something called a codependent personality, and that's very different. If you have a codependent personality, then you're really dependent on someone else to help you make every single decision in your life, for you to feel like you're okay, for you to feel good. That's different than having codependent traits, which might sound kind of confusing. Codependency is not found in the DSM-5, so it's not something you would be diagnosed with, but you can have these codependent traits, which we'll talk about later on, and really they interfere with relationships. So you're really not dependent on someone to make your decisions. You're very confident and very good at making decisions. You're not scared necessarily of upsetting someone, that you're dependent on them emotionally. You tend to be the one running the show. Someone who has codependent traits is very competent. They're very capable. They're super good at finding and meeting needs. But where we struggle is in relationships, and we tend to swing from totally loving this person to completely despising this person to totally loving, completely despising, and it can be just like maddening. So today we're going to take a look at the word codependency, which we said is not a diagnosis. That's not something you're going to go see a therapist and get diagnosed with, but you can have these codependent traits, which are very common amongst people who struggle with codependency, and it's definitely something that you could be raised in. It's something that can be taught, and it's a way you get your needs met. But what we find is that it does not work, and it's very disappointing. So if we take a look at, the word codependent, or having those codependent traits, it's not a life sentence. It's not something that has to be the only way you're ever going to be your whole life. It's actually kind of relieving when you understand what it is, because then it's like, oh, okay, so now that my behavior is starting to make a bit more sense to me, and I can almost see how I'm pushing people away, even though that's never my intention. It's never my intention to be controlling or demanding, but I can now see how maybe I am being that way and how that's pushing someone away, when really what we're trying to do is help. We're trying to be useful, and we're really good at it. So let me give you an example of someone named Susan. So Susan is a fictitious character that you can find in the book, which is on Amazon. And with Susan, let's say she just meets someone. So let's say she goes on a dating app and she's apping and messaging back and forth, and it starts to develop to just a tiny bit more. But Susan is immediately all in. So right from the beginning, Susan is committed. She is not talking to anyone else. She wants to see solely where it goes with this person. And she feels like she knows this person and has known them her whole life. She feels like they're a soulmate just immediately. She's really focused on sameness, everything that they have in common, everything that is the same. But Susan doesn't stop to think about the fact that, wow, I've only been messaging back and forth, maybe even 3 days. I don't know them, right? That doesn't even cross Susan's mind. She's only looking for, wow, I love to kayak and so do you. Oh my gosh, I love dogs and so do you. whoa, your family was like this, so is mine. So it's just any little bit of similarities. Susan really maximizes those. And if there is a difference that's brought to her attention or something that's different between the two, her and the other person, she's very quick to minimize it. So she blows up sameness and then she really shrinks down what's different and she kind of excuses it. And usually later on, it's the deal breakers are found in the difference. And so as she gets further in the relationship, then these differences that were there from the beginning really start to show themselves in a way she can't ignore it. And then it becomes a barrier and then it's a lot of pain and then she does the whole thing all over again. So with Susan, as she's meeting this person and she's all in right from the get-go, if they send her a text, she immediately feels pressure to respond. She gets really anxious. She will even get out of a phone call so she can text back. She drops all of her plans anytime this person suggests or mentions wanting to do something with her. So let's say she was going to go home and clean her house and then go to the gym and meal prep for the week. So she may have all these things she's been waiting until this day to do that. But if this person's like, hey, what are you doing tonight? She's immediately willing to throw everything out the window. And the problem is she does that over and over and over till she's really not taking care of her life and she's really invested and focused on this other person's life. So that's also really common when we struggle with codependency. And truly, she doesn't trust that they like her enough for her to be able to say, I'm busy tonight, but what about next Thursday? Or, hey, what are you doing on Tuesday? Is there another day next week? She thinks that if she says that, she's just never going to hear from anymore. So she tries to fully make herself available all the time. And you can see how that would get exhausting, especially when sometimes they're telling her no. Maybe sometimes they're rescheduling on her. Then that can be a huge letdown. Like, I'm giving you everything. I'm breaking all these plans for you. I'm making sure you're my top priority. And when I find out you're not doing the same for me, there's really no way for me to understand that other than to mean that you don't love me and you don't like me and you're going to leave. And then that really ups those codependent traits. So hopefully you're starting to get an image of, okay, so when we struggle with codependent traits, it's very common to make relationships a prison. We drop everything for the other person. We go all in, full force, super hard, super early on. We're very committed from the jump before we even know the person, which means we're committing before we even know what we're committing to. And we're so afraid that it's not going to go anywhere that we don't ever say no. We don't have any boundaries. We're willing to put them and their priorities and just even what they want ahead of our priorities and our needs. So that's very familiar, very common with someone who's struggling with codependent traits. So when we come back, we'll talk more about this idea of codependent traits, where it comes from, what drives it, and even some more traits of how you can identify and know if you are struggling with codependency. So again, you can find all of this and more from my book, How to Stop Chasing Rejection and Heal Codependent Traits. You can find it on Amazon. I'll also put a link in the description. Take good care. I'll put more videos on the screen to help you understand even more about relational trauma. I'll see you in the next one.